Okay, hey YouTube. I want to do a quick video here on my HP w2207h monitor. I think this is a 22 inch is what it is. Basically, the problem I had was after a power bump that we had, or a blackout, because the power actually shut off, this monitor was intermittently working. I thought it may have been the tower, something with the video card. I've had some power supply issues with this computer. I've changed the power supply now, but this monitor is the first problem I've had with it in like 8 years. So I just wanted to talk about it real quick if anybody else has got this same monitor. Basically, inside of this monitor, I don't know if this will focus or not, but there's some, I might have to go upstairs. There's some capacitors, and I'm gonna head upstairs. There's Ricky. Hey, buddy. I'm gonna set these down so I can get a better shot of them. But basically, this monitor, there's other videos on YouTube of actually pulling it apart. Let's see if I can get a shot of the end of this capacitor. Okay, you can kind of see it there. Let me come to this side. You can kind of see how it's bulging just a little bit. It's more obvious when it's on the circuit board because it's compared to other capacitors. This is the one I really think was the culprit, because you can see the end of it there. If I can focus, it's kind of blown out, and it's bulging as well. So this monitor, it wasn't that hard to do. It was a little tricky. The hardest part was the cables inside of it. Gosh, this is not focusing. Yeah, the hardest part was the cables inside of it. There's other videos on YouTube, so I didn't do a video actually pulling apart because I just wanted to get it fixed and get it back together so I have my computer back. But yeah, essentially you take off this cover, which is on the back side of the stand, if you will. This is where most of the weight comes from this monitor, is this stand. It's really heavy. You pull this cover off, sets in that area, and it just kind of pops on. I'll show you the back side of it. It's got some clips here on the sides, four on the, 2 on each side, and then 1 at the top. And then on the bottom, there's 1, 2, 3 spots where it hooks in. I actually broke those off when I pulled it off. I was kind of fighting it, but it'll go back on fine. It's got enough clips to retain. This is just a cover anyways for this. So once you take that off, you've got 4 screws on the back here that actually hold the monitor to this plate. There's the 4 screws right there, and then you've got the actual monitor separated. Let me go back downstairs and talk about this monitor real quick and how to pull it apart. The hardest part, probably, other than the bezel, was the electrical connections, getting them disconnected because they're super tiny. And I actually broke one of the retaining clips trying to pull it out because there was nothing to really grab onto. I had to use a small little tiny flathead and just kind of slowly push down on the locking tab and then try to pry on it, and pull with the wires, which is really bad, because if you pull one of those wires out of that connector, you're done. You know, you can't replace that. So anyways, once you get this monitor off, I got it on the floor right now because I'm still testing it. I just want to make sure it's not going to cut off. But once you get this monitor off of the base, this bezel, you want to come from this side of the bezel and pry up on it, all the way around. It's got a bunch of locking tabs that go all the way around, and this entire bezel will come off. That's what retains the entire guts, is just this bezel. It's weird. There's nothing else holding it in from falling out. So if you ever have to carry this, don't carry it with the screen down, because if this bezel lets loose, it's gonna, the whole guts will come flying out of this thing. So once you get this bezel off, you've got a couple of things to contend with to take the back off of this. There's no screws or anything that hold this back on. It's just the screen just sits down in it, and then that bezel retains it. So you've got these USBs on the top. On this particular model, you've got this strip down here, this menu strip, and it's just a small little circuit board that just kind of sits in a notch in there. Same thing at the very top. I'll roll around to here. If you can see that power, wherever that is, I can't see the screen, but there's a power button there. It's a little tiny circuit board that sits in a slot. So when this comes out of this back case, the actual screen and the circuit boards, it comes with those boards are attached with wires obviously to it. So just be aware of that. You don't want to damage those. Once you've got the guts pulled out of the monitor, you're going to be flipping this thing over a couple of different times because you've got the screen, which will separate from the actual circuitry here, and you'll need to flip that over. Then you'll be flipping this over. Now the connections in here that you want to take out, the obvious for me was the circuit board. I'm not even sure what that function of that board is. I'm assuming it's some type of power supply or something with those capacitors. So these screws need to come out on this power cord in order to flip that circuit board over, because it's retained here with these, and then on the other side some more retaining screws. There's quite a few connectors on there. I want to say there's 4 on one side and like 2 on something else that you've got to disconnect. So just be careful when you're pulling things apart. You'll see the wires in there and where they go. All the connectors will come off. You just need to be really cautious, really careful with them, and take your time. And again, once you get to, flip this back over, once you get to the actual circuit board, that's the first thing that I kind of went for, was the capacitors in there. And again, look for bulging, look for a small little, burnt spot on the very top there where all the sections come together, because you could have an issue there with the capacitor. And literally those capacitors cost me 75 cents. I replaced 2 of them just because the other one was bulging. There was a third one that was a different voltage value, and I should have probably replaced that as well. So I had a Rocky. Just so you know, the voltage values for those capacitors inside this on that board are 25 volts, 1,000 microfarad is the capacitance. The smaller one that I didn't replace, that I wanted to because it was bulging as well, it was 1,000 microfarad, 16 volt capacitor, and you can see those values right on the side of it. Just find some other videos on YouTube, and you'll see how to change those out. It wasn't that hard. You do need a couple tools. You need a soldering iron, you need a solder sucker to desolder those components from the board, and it's only 2 leads on each side. They're easy to get to. It took me a little while to desolder. I'm not super good with soldering. I've done it before, but I'm not that great. So anyways, HP w2207h, and looks to be working now. So thanks for watching.